Name and rank. Bob Kelly. My rank is retired. Well, I came in with a sports background. I was a newspaper reporter, sports writer, and editor for about 9 years before I had the opportunity to come back to my alma mater, and did that for the next 27 years. When Mitch Haskins was hired as coach, I knew him from my days at Evansville. He'd had an undefeated season that year when he was hired. I served as his, quote, assistant coach, but I was really not an assistant coach. I'd go to all the games, I'd keep stats, I would, remind him if somebody was in foul trouble or minutes played, but I wasn't his number 2 assistant. His number 1 assistant was Chuck Doty back then. But I enjoyed being part of the team in that respect, in addition to my regular job. Well, of the teams that are being honored today, 3 of the 5 I had a connection with. The very first one was a little bit after I would have graduated from Wren Lake as a student, and the last one was the national champions, and I followed them from afar, knew all about them, but I never saw them play that year because I had been gone for a few years at that point in time. It's one of those things too, I was not so far away I shouldn't have been there. I wanted to, and I considered it. It had been 3.5 hour trip for me, but I should have been there. National championship opportunity, I can't believe now that, but that's one of those regrets you have after the fact, and it's too late to do anything about it. Talking to Tim Wills, he was excited. He was a member of one team, he coached 2, and then the last one he was the AD when they were national champions. This is a mighty good one to have all 5 of these classes together. That 72-73 team, like I said, that was after I was a student here and before I returned. That was one of Hummer's best teams. They won the conference that year. They were 7-1 in the old Southern Illinois College Conference, 20-6 overall. They had 5 players that played that year that went on and played at the 4-year level. Roy Rickenberg, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville; Brad Weathers, McKendree College; Ronnie Henderson, Marion College in Indiana; John Kretz, McMurray College; and Randy LeMay, Florida International, and then he transferred back to Marion College in Indiana. But the most important thing about that group is to listen to some of these accomplishments afterwards. The assistant coach that year was Coach Mike McClure, of course. He was one in our charter class of Wren Lake College RLC Sports Hall of Fame. He was an inductee, one of the original 4 members. Jim Waugh, of course, would have been, except he had to wait 1 year for his eligibility, so he was in the 2nd class of that season. Then we have Randy LeMay. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2006 for baseball and men's basketball. Brad Weathers was inducted in the class of 13 as an alumni coach, very successful alumni coach in Southern Illinois. John Kretz was inducted with the baseball team that won a conference championship. Ronnie Henderson inducted in 2018. Ronnie was a standout basketball player on that team. And then last year, Sonny Wyatt, known by Lee now, but he was Sonny to people at Wren Lake College back then. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame last year. He did not play college basketball beyond this. He had an opportunity to, but he declined because he realized at that point in his career and his life that the studies came first and he needed to devote himself. And there may not be a more successful person out of the whole groups that we've had come through here and will go through here than what Sonny was as a business person. Very successful. If we move up to 82-83, the reason that that's more special than any other maybe to Tim is that was his freshman year. That was the closest group, at least when I was connected with the program for years. That team just loved each other. They had a great time together.
A really good group of guys to play with, and we had fun in practice. And in those days we didn't have computers and video games. Our fun was in the gym, and we were gym rats, and we hung out in the gym all the time. My second year, actually, not my freshman year, we had 4 of us Travis Helm, Jim Price, Todd Sturmer, and I, who we came in every day before practice and played 2-on-2 for, you know, big money. We played for a Mountain Dew. And I mean, it was a battle. We went at each other for probably 30, 40 minutes before practice. We were sweating like crazy. And then after practice, we'd all stick around and have shooting contests and free throw contests.
Their record wouldn't indicate that they were the best ever, but they were 22-13, and that was a good season, and they were freshmen. They were better record-wise as sophomores. Out of that group, Steve Fleming of Mount Vernon went to Missouri Baptist. He was the only sophomore on that team, not very many, but he was the only one that went on to a four-year college.
I would say our freshman year, 82-83, Steve Fleming was our best player. He was the returning guy. He had some size, he had skill. He was the guy we all kind of followed his lead because I think we felt like he was our best overall player. Orlando Taylor was a transfer who was extremely athletic, a big, strong, athletic guy who had played at a four-year school before and had transferred in, so he was really gifted. Carl Rice was a big, strong inside player, and Jeff Limbaugh was a big, strong point guard, and Gene Thompson was a 6'5", kind of do-everything guy, wing player who could play inside and guard a lot of different people.
The other members that were freshmen that year, in addition to Tim, who played at SIU, Jim Price, Jamie Rayleigh. At Indiana Central, no team ever got two stronger recruit, big, strong. They recruited men when they recruited Rayleigh and Price. Robbie Jones went to Oakland City, and then he also played at Indiana State, Evansville. Barry Wright, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Dean Murder and Jeff Cochran, they both played at Oakland City College in Indiana. Jeff Wilkinson played at Union College in Kentucky. And Travis Helm got a scholarship from Freed-Hardeman University.
The freshmen, we were just kind of feeling our way. Robbie Jones was a freshman from Evansville. He had a really good freshman year. The freshman, the guy who statistically stood out. Then Jim Price, who played a little bit, went through a period where he didn't play a lot, came back and played a little bit more. He was kind of in and out of the lineup a little bit as a freshman, was our team MVP as a sophomore. So it was just a good mix of guys who fulfilled roles and played very unselfishly, and I think that's why all 9 of us stayed, 9 out of the 10 of us stayed. I was a point guard who I think I didn't care if I scored. I was brought up in a house with a coach, so I was taught the game from an early age, and I think team came first, and I was always wanting to do what was best for the team. And if I scored, great. If I didn't, that was great. I kept better track of my assist statistics than anything. But I think probably my strength was I was a team player, and I understood the game from being raised in a coach's house and playing for good coaches. So I knew how the game was supposed to be played, and that helped.
The team itself, in addition to being 25-7 the next season, set 9 team records that next year and merited induction into the Hall of Fame. The coach that year, of course, was Mitch Haskins. Mitch won 205 games in 10-plus seasons with the Warriors. GRAC championships twice, an SIC championship in his very first year.
He was extremely intense, which was great for a guy like me. I played for Rich Herron in high school, who was intense too, so that was never a problem. He really pushed you. He had high expectations. He expected you to achieve and to do well. So I think that drove us to play hard. I don't know how it came about. Obviously, Coach Haskins probably had a contact somewhere that got that going. It was really a fun thing for us to experience as young guys in college. Had a team from overseas coming in. They were pretty hyped up as far as how good they were. They had some size, and we did kind of a gift exchange at the beginning. I think we had some Ren Lake t-shirts, and they gave us a little something. We got to play international rules, which was really a cool thing. With if there's a travel, you run out and you grab it and you just run out of bounds and throw it in. You didn't have to. The referees didn't handle the ball. Balls that hit the rim are live balls that they bounce, so you could just I couldn't, but some of the bigger guys, you could just go up there and take the ball off the rim. There was no goaltending as long as it had hit the rim already. So different set of rules that we got a chance to play that we'd never played it before, never did play it again really. So it was a good start to a college career, and we had a lot of fun with it. I transferred to SIU Edwardsville, got an opportunity to play the next year on a partial scholarship, and I was a backup at the point guard position, and got beat by Kentucky Wesleyan in the championship game of the Division II regional tournament on their home court. I think they beat us by 3, and they went on and won the national championship that year, and nobody else played them within 18 points from that point on. So we were really good. Came back the next year and played my last year, and was the starting point guard that year. Had a good year, but not like what we would have wanted to. And then I stayed there. The following year as a graduate assistant with a basketball team. I'd finally decided I wanted to coach. Felt like I wanted to coach college. The next 2 years, Coach Heron hired me at SIU as his graduate assistant, and was actually there a 3rd year in grad school. Just started looking for jobs, and I'd actually talked to Coach Haskins about being his assistant here. The job opened up as the head coach, and I interviewed for it and got hired in August of 1992, and 30 years later, I'm still here. So. 92, 93, I didn't even realize this was how it worked until I started working on this year's reunion. It was 10 years later. I played here 82, 83 is when I came on campus as a freshman. 92, 93, I come back as a first-year coach for my first team. So the 92, 93 team was a lot of local kids with a smattering of a couple of kids from Indiana. We had a transfer from Arkansas. We had a walk-on who was living in Mount Vernon, who was originally from Houston, Texas. Just kind of a smattering of guys. I think they'd be the first to tell you we weren't the most talented group in the world, but man, they played hard as any team I ever had.
They won 11 games that season, but they had some talented on that team. Well, definitely had some, but Randy Wolf was the lone sophomore on that team that went on to play at the 4-year level. He played at Arkansas College. There were 4 guys that played from their freshman class that year that went on. Jamie Veach and Brian Lahr both played at SIU Carbondale.
Going from my freshman year and literally playing very little, like the first 5, 6 games, the speed of the game and everything, I was just a little bit in awe maybe. And struggled. But as I, realized, hey, I've just got to work harder at this and I've got to do things better, realizing that I could play at that level and then beyond, I think was so gratifying.
Mark Finley played at Manchester College in Indiana, and Brian Kern, who played both baseball and basketball at Wren Lake, played for St. Louis University baseball and went on and played professionally. He was a free agent with the Oakland Athletics. And the other member of that team that's gone on to accomplish quite a bit, sports-wise, assistant coach Ronnie Russell. He left after 3 years to become an assistant coach under Robert Korn at Missouri Southern, and then associate head coach eventually. And then he became the women's head coach down there, and he's had great success with the women's program, Missouri Southern State University.
Your first team, I think, always is special to you, but that group was special not just because they were my first team, it's because they weren't that much younger than I was, and they allowed me to coach them, and they did everything I asked of them.
It was a great time. It's I always tell my kids, my wife, my friends, it was the best times of my life. I made lifelong friends. I had a great coach, he's still a friend. I played in 92, 93. My gosh, that's a long time ago. But we had a great time. We had a good, hardworking, close-knit group of guys that we still talk to this day. It was a life-changing time in my life. That's where I figured out my work ethic, my lifelong friends, what I'm going to do with my life. A lot of important people there at Wren Lake that helped me out a lot.
So from my playing experiences at Wren Lake, I mean, my coach was Tim Wills, who I also got to coach with. but just, getting my first college experience with him and knowing that he was a super good family man who felt like he did things right. He didn't go overboard one way or the other and being, too crazily stern or too easy on players. But at the same time, he had a good mixture of everything, and I always appreciated that.
And he helped me out a lot. He picked me up for school sometimes. I didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a car at times. I was there at Wren Lake a lot. I went to school in the day, so we had practice. I also worked midnight shift in the maintenance department, and I would sleep in the boys' locker room. I'd sleep on the couch, and I'd get my pillow and blanket out of my locker, because that particular semester I had Coach Wills for like a health class. I had him Monday through Friday. So I would get off work and go to sleep, and he would wake me up for class in the morning. So that was something else. It was tough to go through, but it built a lot on me. So it was good.
I mean, we were kind of making it up as we went, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I credit the players for being willing to listen and to play and to try, and those guys have almost to a man have gone on to be very successful, done really well. So that hard work that they had learned, not from me, they had already had that in them from their parents and from their high school coaches, has carried them on through, and they've done really well.
The next year, 2002-2003, was under Coach Wills as well.
You know what, I couldn't tell you the record. I will say this, they were a really talented group. The 02-03 team had a lot of talent. That was a team that legitimately had a chance to win the region and go to the national tournament and make some noise at the NJCA national tournament.
02-03 was my freshman year. I'm a graduate of 04. When I think back to the 02-03 team, it was my first time coming to Wren Lake. I'm a local kid, small town kid, and I could not get over the amount of talent that was on that team. The sophomore class in front of me with Joel Jay and Lawrence Barnes and Drew Porter and those guys, they were just an incredible talent, and they had a very successful year before that. My class coming in, we had a transfer from SIU and Matt Miller, who was a hard-nosed, tough ball player, and David Nabnett and Brandon Hartwell and all those guys. It was just amazing at the amount of talent that was on one team here, and so it was pretty cool to be a part of that. When coming to play basketball at Wren Lake College, Joel Jay was the guy. Being a local kid, I got to come over here in the summers and work out with Joel, and just Joel's story. He never played high school basketball, but the dude was, he was unreal.
One of the great recruiting stories of all time. Jared Good had become my assistant that year, and he had been working at a charter school in the Chicago area, teaching and coaching, and I hired him, and I don't know, a couple of weeks after he got hired, he calls me, and he's still up there, and he says, Coach, you're going to think this is crazy, but there's a guy who's the janitor up here at our school who's a pretty good player. And he's never been to college, and he's about 24 years old, and I'm like, hey, if you can get him to come down for a visit, we'll watch him work out. Turns out it was Joel Jay who came in here and was all conference 2 years and went on and played Division II basketball. And Joel is now an AD at Truman Community College in the city of Chicago, and has done really well. But we had a couple of guys. David Abnett from Indiana was a really talented player, about a 6'3" guard. Probably in my 18 years had two of the best back-to-back games that I've ever seen as a sophomore. We played Logan and Southeastern back-to-back in the conference, and he had, I can't remember who was against, which was against which, but he had 38 and 39 points in back-to-back games against two really good teams.
The GRAC at that time, we were loaded with talent, but the GRAC was unbelievable. Wabash was just coming off of a national championship run, and Antoine Barber, who was, had just moved on to Kentucky to play, and SIC was loaded with talent, and I believe his name was Dante Smith. He got drafted by the Atlanta Hawks, and there was a couple other guys there that went on to major Division I schools. And Johnny Logan was always tough, just as they are now. And so I was it was just incredible, the amount of talent of junior college basketball in just our area and our region alone.
Had a point guard from Columbus, Indiana, Brandon Hartwell, who was a really good player. Drew Porter from DuQuoin, 6'6", kind of a wing player, was really good. That team had Matt Miller, who came in as a point guard as well, and he was a transfer from SIU, had been down there on Coach Weber's roster as a freshman. So it was really a talented group. We had some injury issues off and on during the year that hurt us. And then I just said I didn't complain about refereeing later in my career, but we got a couple of really bad calls in the region semifinals that really hurt us.
I believe we lost in the first round to Spoon River. It was one of those years where a lot of injuries just kind of hit. I didn't get to finish the year with a broken wrist. Brent Hartwell, got out at the beginning of the year, and so it was a year that had a lot of promise, and I think it was just a lot of unforeseen circumstances happened that year that kind of couldn't get in a good flow as a team.
Those things happen. You can't, as you said, you can't change the past. It's just a little frustrating because that was a really good group.
Junior college is such a different animal because you hear it all the time about, this stuff's going to go quick. You're not have a lot of time. You got to, but I mean, literally in JUCO, you have one team 1 year and then you never see those guys again. And so, that's why I'm really excited about this reunion, is getting to see some of those guys who I haven't seen in 20 years. And so it's those memories that I have that I look back upon and just being a part of a team and being a part of guys who are doing, we're here at Rend Lake College, there's not a whole lot to do. So playing ball and different stuff like that was what we did and how we bonded. And so it's just those times, spend those times with those guys. Even at the time, if you didn't, if things weren't the greatest in practices or games and whatnot, it was still a good time to look back upon because, like I said, it happened so fast and it was over with. And so looking forward to hanging out with these guys again.
Their assistant coach that year also gained some notoriety down the road. Assistant coach was Glenn Box. Glenn, in my opinion, one of the nicest fellas I ever met. He's just a great guy, low key, but just very good guy. And he went on. He is now the associate head coach for the Indiana University women's basketball program.
So I actually played basketball at Rend Lake College in 1995-1996 season. I took over in the assistant women's coaching position under Coach Tim Wills. I think that was 2002 through 2005. And I was hired as the head women's basketball coach there at the time from 2005 to 2008. Between, Mark Kern, Coach Wills, who's my current mentor, anytime I have any sort of questions, I call him. Brent at the time, those three were really, Lisa Price took care of me. An army of people literally trying to look out for me. And so my career would not have taken off, and I'm sure none of those people other than Coach Wills really know the role that they played, but they were very, influential in my career. So.
And then the last group we have to recognize, people might be a lot more familiar with them than they ever were Bob Kelly, and that's the national champions from 2012, 2013, coached by Randy House. They were just 30-3, 14-2, and they were 14-2 and won the Great Rivers Athletic Conference. And I was proud to return a little bit later for a recognition for that group. And Randy got up, and one of the first things he said was, the national championship was really outstanding. How can you say it wasn't? But winning the conference that season may have been as bigger accomplishment than winning the national championship, because he won that against all others Division I programs. And when you can go 14-2 against Division I opponents that are your biggest rivals, your John A. Logans, your Southeasterns, your Wabash Valleys, and he won a conference championship with the team that, winning the national championship seemed like a breeze compared to the teams that they'd had to prepare against all season.
You got to have good talent, you got to have good coaching, you got to have good team chemistry, but you also have to have a little bit of good fortune. And You know, just as an example, I didn't recruit Bronson Verhines out of high school. He ended up going to Kaskaskia and played really well. And I realized, gosh, I should have recruited him. Well, he didn't go back to Kaskaskia sophomore year. He came to Rend Lake. And that was Randy's first year. And we both tried to convince Bronson to play. And he said, nah, I'm just kind of burnt out on basketball, don't want to play. Finished his degree, graduated, went to SIU Edwardsville the next year. Had a year of school over there, wasn't playing, just going to school. That was the next year is when Randy recruited his little brother, Dawson, coming out of high school at Woodlawn. And believe it or not, Bronson calls him. Would there be a chance I could come and walk on and be on the team? He said, you don't have to walk on, we'll give you a scholarship. And what's he end up? He ends up the MVP of the national tournament.
That 2012-2013 season was undoubtedly my favorite year of basketball in my whole life. First, it allowed me to continue playing with my brother, which is not something that many people get the opportunity to do at the collegiate level. So I was very thankful to be able to do that. But then the season itself was just a lot of fun. We were in a lot of close games, a lot of exciting games, and somehow we always seemed to come out on top.
And they had, you know, one of the best games I think I've ever seen was their, I think it was the quarterfinal game against South Suburban. We were down about 23 points with about 8-10 minutes to go in the game, and somehow everything went right for us, everything went wrong for them. We came back, sent it at overtime, win the game in overtime, and then go on to win the national tournament.
I actually interviewed with Coach House and Coach Holder August of 2012. It was actually my first college job, and we met at the barbecue place across from the Pilot. And I was fully suited, and I come in, and Coach House is in a t-shirt and shorts, Coach Holder's in t-shirt and shorts. And first thing he said to me was, hey, you got the job, and you're overdressed. So our first open gym that we had, I said, you know, I told some buddies of mine, like, hey man, I think we got a really good team. There was like a bunch of new guys, and practice was fun. And Coach House, you know, I was an assistant, and so Coach House allowed me to, you know, to be a part of it. So I was there 6 days a week, you know, driving up and back down the highway, because I felt like if we're pushing these kids to be great and be disciplined and consistency, I got to do the same. So that's kind of how we started. After my time there, I've stayed in contact with Coach Wills and Coach House a lot. Good advocates of Rend Lake. You're not going to build you $1 million house on a Rend Lake salary, but it wasn't about that for any of us. It was about that, you know, we wanted to do something special with some kids.
You know, Coach House, he really let us play freely. He had more of a hands-off approach, and through that approach, we really developed a strong chemistry. Everyone knew their role, everyone accepted their role, and we really did get along on and off the court. I have fantastic memories of just traveling to and from the games and the hotels we stayed in. It was just a lot of fun.
My experience at Rend Lake College was a great one, just full of memories, and, you know, made a lot of lifelong friends during my time there at Rend Lake College. You know, specifically my sophomore year, that team just gelled so well together, and we just built such a good team chemistry, which I believe led us to a lot of success on the basketball floor. And, you know, I think that starts from the top with Coach House and our assistant coaches and just all the players and fans and trainers, and, you know, everybody in the athletic department just played such a big role in our success on the basketball floor. I was fortunate enough to play with some very, very good basketball players during my time at Rend Lake College. One in particular would be my older brother Bronson, which was just so cool to share those memories and win a national championship with your brother. I do want to set this straight for the record that I was then, and I still am to this day, a better basketball player than Bronson. And if there's ever any question or debate on the topic, please just ask Coach House, and he will vouch for me on that.
That team obviously included tournament MVP Bronson Verhines, all-tournament team Jarrell Taylor, Cortez Macklin. The Sportsmanship Award for the tournament, Dawson Bernhines, and the Coach of the Year, naturally, Randy House. Macklin was a second-team D2 men's basketball All-American. Academic All-Americans on that team, all three of them superior level, top level. Bronson Bernhines, Dennis Fromling, Jesse Smith. The guys that were sophomores that year that went on to the four-year level, Bronson Bernhines, Dawson Bernhines, Jesse Smith, all SIU Carbondale. Also Chase Hines, SIU Carbondale. Noel Allen, Missouri Southern State University. Corey Ayala, Rogers State University. Dennis Fromling, Lindenwood University, Belleville. And Michael Jackson, McKendree University. So that team, and others will speak highly of them besides me, but that was the group that did it. Regretfully, Bob Kelly didn't go up and see him that year. He should have.